Hello and welcome to the allure of fashion and the intrigue of great books. Pack your bags with fashion and fiction for today's podcast trip, checking out fabulous hotels with captivating mysteries and what fashion can tell us about those mysteries. I'm your host, Wendy Kendall. I'm a mystery and romance author. The first of my 5 books, Cat Out of the Bag, is available in paperback from harlequin.com and also at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other online sites. Cat Out of the Bag. Cat is Catherine Watson, purse designer and sleuth. As Catherine moves from designer bags to body bags, she's uncovering clues to the murder of Brenda, Bayside's mayor and Catherine's friend, killed at Catherine's gala fashion event. Of course, Catherine's compelled to investigate her friend's murder. She matches wits with police officer Jason Holmes and his canine partner, Hobbs. Catherine's rescue cat, Parada, watches all. There's so much fun to this cozy mystery. Pistachio Makes a Splash is the prequel. Before Brenda's untimely death, I wanted Catherine and her best friend to share a mystery adventure together. This book is the one. Like all my books, this great Bayside mystery is available at Amazon and other online sites. Please check my website, wendywritesbooks.com, for news, including updates on my book 6 mystery. It's in final edits now. Thank you especially to all the readers who've told me how much they've enjoyed my books. My guest today is award-winning author Kathleen Kaska. She writes the award-winning Sidney Lockhart mystery series. It's set in the 1950s, and the classic Triviography mystery series, which includes the Sherlock Holmes quiz book, updated and released by Lyons Press on November 1st, 2020. And she also writes the Kate Carraway Animal Rights mystery series. Welcome, Kathleen Kaska, in pursuit of fashion and fiction.
Hi, Wendy. Thanks for having me.
Well, your delightful cozy mysteries with a fun touch of humor, the Sidney Lockhart series. It's set in the 1950s, and setting is so important in these books, with each plot involving a different and historic hotel. These books read so authentic to the time period. What are some highlights about how you choose the hotel and then research it in that time period?
Good question. That choosing the hotels is pretty easy. I choose places that I've stayed at many times. And when I'm there, I do a lot of research. I look at their old scrapbooks, and I'm there and I'm at the library looking at old newspaper articles. And so I do a lot of the research when I'm there staying at the hotels. So it's I have a long list of them because my husband and I like to travel. And when we travel, we prefer to stay at old historic hotels. They have such a personality on their own. And they're almost like a character in the book. So choosing the hotels is easy.
What are some unique 1950 fashion aspects that you especially wanted to include in these books? And also, since your books are set in a couple of states, Texas and Arkansas, what fashion distinctions come up between different states?
Most of the books, all of the books are set in the South. Most of them are in Texas, a couple in New Orleans, in Louisiana, and then this first one set in Arkansas. And there's not a lot of difference in the fashion. The one set in Texas, naturally, Sydney has cowboy boots, so she wears cowboy boots a lot. And so what I notice in between Texas and Arlington and Hot Springs, Arkansas, is that Arkansas, at least in Hot Springs, their fashion tends a little more to the bling side. And
Ah.
Texas is just, in the 50s, I mean, it was fashionable, but there it was just, well, it's still today boots and seemed like women um, dressed up when they went out, but otherwise they were very casual.
Fashion gives readers clues about a character's personality. Can you tell us about your protagonist, Sydney Lockhart, and how her fashion sense reflects her?
Okay. Sydney she's a single woman. She's in her late 20s. And when she's on a case, she often dresses in disguise. And because she's tall and she's thin, she has a whole set of men's clothes where she will go out dressed as a man if she needs to. She's also a reporter if she needs to get a story or if she's on a case. So she has her man clothes. And but then she also likes to dress up. She has cowboy boots and she loves shoes. So she's into shoes. But they're not always practical when she's out on a case. So when she's out on her case, she'll either have her boots on or her saddle shoes. And so, she has, different wardrobes for whatever she's doing. She also has a wealthy Dallas socialite cousin who is extremely into fashion. And she will hardly not be seen in public without wearing her Ferragamos or Christian Dior suits. She's just really, really into fashion. But she kind of takes it to the extreme sometimes. For instance, she's helping Sydney on a case in Murder at the Driscoll. This is the fourth book in the series, and she goes undercover as a sous chef in the restaurant of the hotel. Well, Ruth knows nothing about cooking, but that doesn't stop her. She's there. She makes her way into the hotel, and then she talks her way into having a position as restaurant concierge, where she decides to outfit all the waiters in purple tuxes and fur cummerbunds. So, so she's always pulling these bizarre ideas of how she's going to use fashion in her disguises. And then also in this book, Murder at the Driscoll, a new character shows up. She's a 12-year-old girl named Lydia, and she was just going to be in the first book, but she made such an impression on me and the other readers that now she's a regular character. And her father owns a live vaudeville theater in Austin, Texas. So she has access to a wardrobe and she dresses in disguise. So, for instance, if she's with Sydney on a case, she might come as Sherlock Holmes. When they were in New Orleans on a case, Lydia came in dressed like a voodoo queen. So, yeah, there are a lot of disguises in with the women here in this book, and that makes it a lot of fun. I never really know what's going to happen. I just kind of wait till my characters tell me, and it's usually pretty bizarre.
This is so fun. It not only surprises the reader, but surprises the author sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like I never know. I'm not a outliner when I write. I'm a pantser. So I just wait and just see. I just wait till my characters start talking, and then it makes writing easy. All I have to do is listen to them.
And I love that whole idea of fashion being used for deception. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. That's so fun.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to focus on that in my reading today. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the very first Sydney Lockhart book.
Oh, good. Oh, good, good. Okay, well, I got a couple more questions I'm
Sure.
dying to ask you before we
Okay.
get to the reading, but now I'm excited. Okay, I'm kind of torn, but I have to ask these questions. Um, so you've told us about a couple of the characters. Is there any other, maybe a couple of other main characters that you want to tell us about fashion's impact on them?
Well, uh, Sydney's now romantic partner and partner in crime. She meets in the first book, and he's a detective for the Hot Springs Police Department and suspects her of the murder. So I so he's in the book, and he and Sydney eventually open up a detective agency in Austin. So here's an Arkansas guy and coming with his suits and what he's used to wearing for work, and Sydney keeps on his case to dress more like a Texan. And so he's, I don't think I'm into that. And she goes, yeah, you need some black cowboy boots. He goes, no, I don't think I'm into that. But she finally talks him into it. And so he gets his black cowboy boots. And so Sydney's happy. But otherwise, he's dressed like a typical uh, man from the 50s, men dressed up all the time, coat and tie and suit and a fedora. So that's Dixon. And let's see. Um, Her father comes in, Sydney's father comes in every now and then, but he's retired and he's a fisherman. So he, dresses like, he's ready to go out and, catch fish. But the men aren't as colorful in terms of fashion as the women. But yeah, they have their moments. So
That's a good point. The men's fashions were so different back then. That is a really good point.
right, yeah. Um, And I kind of like that. I mean, they dressed up, they had their suits and ties on and their wingtip shoes and two-tone colored shoes, and it was pretty classy.
Hmm. Nice. Yeah.
And you could definitely distinguish men and women in their fashion back then. And today, it's like everybody dresses the same. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if
No, that's
shoes,
true.
clothes, it's not that different. But back then there was a big difference. So when Sydney goes undercover and dresses as a man, that's a big change.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Oh, cool. Okay, now I can't wait any longer. Would
Okay.
you treat us to a reading,
Yeah,
please?
definitely. Sydney is at the Arlington Hotel. Murders occurred, a couple of them, and she's been a suspect. So she's been trying to clear her name. And in the process, she gets into a lot of trouble. Threats have been made on her life. And Ralph Dixon, the detective, sequesters her in her hotel room and tells her she cannot leave and without him knowing it. But he puts a guard outside, a police officer named O'Reilly, but she talks him into letting her out. And she talks O'Reilly and the house detective into taking her to some of the underground places in Hot Springs because she's still on the case. She still is looking for who she suspects is the killer. So they take her to a casino, which is illegal. It was an underground casino. And so that's where this scene starts. Um, Officer O'Reilly had to hide his car because he didn't want anybody to see that he's there. So they had to hide the car, track across a railroad trestle, and take the back way in. So they're coming into the casino. And so I'll start there. We approached the gate behind two identical Black women who were dressed in matching skin tight red dresses, which they did justice to. Complementing their outfits were silver shawls, silver spiked heels, silver gloves, and silver hats with brims wide enough to keep the sun out, or, in a more immediate situation, the rain from ever finding them. At night, the hats looked like shimmering flying saucers coming in for a landing. Okay, so that's when she sees these two women, and now they're inside the casino, and she's walking around checking things out. And all of a sudden, she hears, "Hey, white girl, why are you wearing those men's stupid trousers and those stupid shoes?" I turned and saw the red and silver twins perched on stools, sipping drinks as colorful as they were. I looked down at my attire. For a fast getaway, if necessary, I looked at their silver shoes. The heels were 4 inches at least and as thin as toothpicks. A narrow ankle strap and a small strip of rhinestone-studded leather across the toe were what held the shoes on their feet. So they're sitting there talking now. And so she finds out their names, their sisters, twin sisters, Charlene and Nadine. And Nadine can't get away from the fact that Sydney is dressed like a man. You know, she's just focused on that. She goes, are those real? Sydney's wearing her saddle shoes now. So Nadine says, are those really women's shoes? Of course. Sometimes a girl needs easy walking shoes. Nadine stared longingly at my saddle shoes, probably thinking about her aching arches. Here, I said, untying my right shoe. Try it on. Get out, Nadine says. No, I'm serious. They're comfortable. Here. It took Nadine a while to untie the knot on her shoe strap. When she did, she handed it to me. We switched. I tied the silver spike onto my foot and stood up and stumbled. Look here, Nadine said, you got to tie a double knot or they'll slide off. Give me your foot. I laid my foot in her lap and she tied a knot that would have earned her a Girl Scout badge. We talk about tart shoes. These would have driven my mother crazy. Nadine had my saddle shoe on and she and Charlene were giggling so hard they had to hold on to one another to keep from toppling over. I walked around with one leg shorter than the other. How you managed to walk all the way from the parking lot in these shoes, I'll never understand. At that point, the place is raided. The casino's raided, so they've got to leave quickly. They've got to run out of the place. Well, here's Sydney with two different shoes on. Okay, so she finds Officer O'Reilly and Grady, and they make their way out of the casino. They've got to cross back over the railroad trestle. And Sydney's got this shoe on her foot. And so they're running. And here's O'Reilly. Said, keep going, O'Reilly yelled. If I get caught, I'm dead meat. Running across the gravel parking lot and the muddy field on the other side of the fence, I could handle. The railroad track was another story. With the cops chasing us, I couldn't take time to stop and remove the shoe. I looked down and forced my eyes to focus on the railroad ties. It had stopped raining, but the clouds still lingered, making the night uncomfortably dark. I didn't bother to shout to O'Reilly to pull out his flashlight. He was too far ahead, running like a rhino after a mate. I turned to glance behind me and was relieved to see the cops were not coming after us. Eventually, we weren't important enough for them to risk tackling the train trestle in the dark. They stood at the tracks and watched as we scrambled across the bridge. Just as I was beginning to feel the elation of freedom, I stumbled. I grabbed the rail to catch myself, and all bodily functions, voluntary and involuntary, stopped. I felt the vibration and knew why the cops were no longer in hot pursuit. The whistle of the train split the night air and drove a spike through my heart. Grady came up behind me and yanked me by my arm to help me up. His gesture was futile. I was anchored to the track, the silver tart shoe wedged between a tie and a rail. Officer O'Reilly turned around and shouted, "The train, get up, get up." "My foot's caught," I screamed. Grady tugged at my ankle. It didn't budge. I grappled at the strap, and Nadine's knot held tight. I understood now why trapped animals chew themselves free. I would have tried that, but when I saw the bright light of the engine illuminating the tracks, I knew I didn't have time to start chewing. The train had rounded the corner, and another ear-splitting blast from the whistle told me we were goners. I wanted to pray, but for some stupid reason, I concentrated on not wetting my pants, as if it mattered. O'Reilly ran over, knelt down, and snapped out his pocket knife. What is it about impending death that turns people into idiots? I started screaming as I envisioned this Irish cop slicing off my foot. I felt the cold blade next to my skin, and before I could push his hand away, I heard a snap. He sliced the strap instead. It didn't matter. For all his heroic efforts, we wouldn't make it to the end of the trestle before the train ground us to Hamburger. Riley threw a beefy arm around my waist. His other arm looped around Grady's neck. It's true what Newton postulated about gravity. Objects, no matter their weight, if dropped from the same height, will hit the bottom at the same time. As soon as we flew from the trestle, O'Reilly let go of Grady and me. From a height of at least 30 feet, the three of us hit the river in one giant splash.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So
Ah,
in this case, Sydney's desire for shoes and fashion got her into a lot of trouble.
that's almost fatal fashion.
Yes, it is. Oh, yeah,
Oh
you're right.
no. I love that scene too because it's so suspenseful and tense. It builds up to that. And yet even still there's an underlying humor that's there. And so I'm feeling the humor, but at the same time I'm tensing up. That's really beautiful scene.
Thank you. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you for a great reading.
Thank you. Well, it was fun to write it, and at the beginning of that scene when they're going into the casino, they have to walk across the railroad tracks, and O'Reilly puts his hand on the rail before they start. So that's kind of some foreshadowing about finding out if there's a train coming. So when they're going back, they don't have time to do that.
Perfect. Oh, I love that. Well, the hotels in your books, they feel so real when I'm reading the books, and the settings contribute so much to the stories. How do you create the unique atmosphere for each hotel and successfully show that on the page?
Well, the first one is at the Arlington Hotel in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And if I totaled up all the nights I've stayed at that beautiful place, I think I came up with 4 months. So my husband and I have stayed there a lot. The last two times, we each stayed an entire month. We stayed a month one year and a month the next year. So it's like our home, our Arkansas home. And I know every nook and cranny of that hotel.
Mm,
So it was easy for me just to write it into the story. And the same is true with the second hotel, the Luther, which is a hotel on the Texas coast in a really small town. We've probably stayed there a dozen times. And the second time we checked in, the manager said, "Pick any room you want. You're family now."
oh, love
So,
that.
Lloyd would get up, and my husband Lloyd would get up early in the morning and go in the kitchen and make his own coffee, and so the manager would come and say, "Oh, I'm out of breakfast rolls. Can you run down to the grocery store and get me some?" So it was like, these two places were like our homes. Um, Galveston, the Galvez Hotel is probably my favorite hotel ever. It's in Galveston, Texas. It's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful. And again, I've stayed there a lot. Um, and, Galveston was kind of like Hot Springs, Arkansas. Back in the 50s, there was an underworld of gangsters and gambling. And so, I brought that into both of the stories. Um, and there's just that those locations are so rich in history, and most
Mm.
of it's notorious. So it was just easy to write that into a 1950s mystery. Um, the Driscoll Hotel in Austin and the Minger Hotel in San Antonio both are known for their their hauntings. So I bring that into the story. The Minger in San Antonio is right across the street from the Alamo and right near the Riverwalk. So
Oh,
again, it's like the surroundings, not just the hotel, but the surroundings contribute so much to the story. The latest one, the Pontchartrain Hotel in New Orleans, I haven't stayed there that much, but it didn't take long for me to get a feel for the place. It's located in the Garden District, um, about a mile from the French Quarter. and talk about a city that's just got such a history to it. I mean, you have the food and you have the music and you have the voodooism there, and you have and I bring all of that into the story. So yeah, it's just it's a delight to write these books because I get to go back in time and I usually find out something that was factual that happened during the time, and I write that into the plot as well. So not only are you reading a fiction mystery, you're also reading a lot of history about the area and the hotel.
And they are a delight to read. I definitely endorse that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, I have to say that I always enjoy how clothing reflects a character's personality. And the saying, don't judge a book by its cover, that's controversial. Clothing is similar because it can play a pivotal role in shaping our initial judgments. When we encounter a character for the first time, their attire becomes one of our primary sources of information about them. Stereotypes associated with specific types of clothing can lead us to make assumptions about a character's personality, social status, or profession. However, it's essential to remember that these assumptions can be deceiving, as clothing is just one aspect of personality. And of course, in mysteries, suspects may be trying to throw you off the scent. And even in romances, there can be fashion subterfuge. As characters embark on their narrative journey, their clothing can change significantly, symbolizing their growth or regression. These transformations in their wardrobe mirror internal changes within their personality. For example, shy and introverted characters may start wearing more vibrant and confident outfits as they gain self-assurance. Such changes in clothing serve as visual clues, showing the readers the character's development over time. A uniform signifying authority or a subculture's distinctive attire create choices that shape the character's interactions and relationships with others. Characters from different cultures may dress in specific ways to honor their heritage or conform to societal expectations. By examining characters' clothing within cultural contexts, we gain insight into their background and experiences. Characters who defy cultural expectations through their clothing challenge societal norms and contribute to diverse storytelling. Understanding clothing's impact on character development adds depth to storytelling, fostering visual and emotional connections with readers. So pay attention to a character's clothing choices. They reveal volumes about their identity and the story. My protagonist, Catherine Watson, is a fashion designer, so she's particular about her clothing and features her own designs. She notices fashion around her, and especially the unique fashions around the Pacific Northwest, contrasted with Rodeo Drive in Los Angeles, where her business grew, and also contrasts with fashion centers around the world. And often it's her attention to detail that zeroes in on some specific clues to mysteries. On the other hand, Catherine's mother, Moon Java, is a fan of the hippies and flower children of the groovy 1960s. She loves bright colors, tie-dye, and meditative, inspired, long flowing dresses, and also peasant blouses with jeans. And then there's Catherine's grandmother, Pam. She retains much from her English upbringing in Great Britain, and her ingrained fashion sense fits very well into the similar weather patterns around the Pacific Northwest. Kathleen, do you have your own favorite fashion accessory you can tell us about that may reveal something about your own personality?
Well, that's easy. I'm a shoeaholic.
Ah,
Yeah, I love shoes, and I have a whole closet full of them, and I think it's harder for me to get rid of my shoes than it is to get rid of some books on my shelf. But yeah, I like shoes, and the last few years I've been into boots. So I've kind of got a little collection of boots. I have my red cowboy boots, of course, which are my go-to shoes, wherever I need to be for a long period of time and be comfortable. Then I have my green and black cowboy boots, which are really dressy and uncomfortable, but I wear them anyway because they're just so cute. And then when I have to really relax, I have different colored knockoff brand Converse shoes
Mm.
that I wear. I have a turquoise color and a mustard color, and so there's a lot of if you look at me and you see color, it's on my shoes.
Oh, I
So
love
uh,
splashes of color.
yeah, yeah, or I'll put a complimentary scarf on, but I like my comfort, and so if I have to wear uncomfortable shoes, then the rest of my clothes are just really comfortable.
Well, in closing, would you tell us a little bit about your Kate Caraway Animal Rights Mystery Series?
Well, Kate Caraway is very different from Sydney. They have similarities in the fact that they're very strong women. But the Kate Caraway series is set in current times, and Kate is outdoors a lot. She starts off with a wildlife rescue facility in Africa. So you can imagine she's not into style and fashion. But then she's forced to come back home and deal with some issues here. So each of the three books in that series are very much outdoor scenes. The first one is Run Dog Run. It takes place in the hill country in Texas, and she's doing her investigation there out on a ranch. And the second one is a two-horse town, which takes place in Montana. So she's out in the mountainous area. She's riding horses and, driving them down mountain roads. And then the third one just came out a couple of years ago, Eagle Crossing. It takes place here in the Pacific Northwest on Lopez Island. So
Ah,
she's on Lopez Island. She's staying at an animal rescue facility, and a murder happens, and she's a suspect, just like Sydney. When in the Sydney books, when there's a murder, the main character is a suspect. So she's outdoors most of the time, and her clothing is pretty practical.
well, Kathleen Kaska, thank you so much for sharing this fashion and fiction fun with us. Any final words about your books or what's coming up next for your readers to look forward to?
Well, I'm real excited. There are six books in my Sydney series, and about 3 years ago, I connected with a new publisher, and she picked up all of my books plus the new ones, and she rebranded everything. And I'm just really pleased. The covers are just, you know, so delightful, and you can tell just by the cover that it's a Sydney Lockhart book. I've got her red shoes right here, and so we just released the last one. So now all six of them are out, and they're just lovely. And then I'm working on number seven.
Ah,
Uh, it should be out maybe hopefully in the summer, but probably later than that. I'm still working on it. And then I have a list of like three or four more after that. So
fantastic. Well, thank you, Kathleen Kaska. Listeners, you will want to check out Kathleen's website, kathleenkaska.com, and find out more about all of her books, her blog, her gallery of fun photos and beautiful bird photos, and more interesting information. My character Pam is an avid bird lover, bird watcher, and she feeds them too. And she would be thrilled by Kathleen's photos of those birds. And listeners, you're invited to my website, wendywritesbooks.com, to see my books and explore more on fashion and fiction. Thank you, listeners, for joining in. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And join me next time for the allure of fashion and the intrigue of great books.